Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Humans in AI podcast. This is the podcast where we dive into the real-life stories of the top leaders and entrepreneurs within the artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, and data center space. These people truly are at the top of their game. We're going to have honest and authentic conversations with all our guests. We're going to chat about their career journeys, the highs and the lows, and even the lessons they've learned from the mistakes they've made and the victories they've celebrated along the way. It's all about sharing their experience and their knowledge and how they see the future of the space they're in. So if you're looking for practical advice from people who've walked the same path as you, or just a little inspiration, you're in the right place. We're going to be dropping new episodes every Thursday, so make sure you stay tuned and don't miss out. Hi, John. Thanks very much for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Nick. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, wonderful. Well, really been looking forward to seeing you. Before we get started and right into it, are you able to just give a quick sort of helicopter view, who you are and where you're working now and what you're doing?
So I am John Belizaire, CEO of Soluna Holdings. Soluna Holdings is in the business of making renewable energy the global superpower by developing data centers that are co-located with renewable energy plants that have high degrees of wasted energy, also known as curtailment. Most people don't know this, but the renewable energy space is growing at leaps and bounds. But there's this little known secret that about 30 to 40% of that energy is unused and is a big challenge for a lot of these power plants. And that has a lot to do with the grid infrastructure and its original design to be synchronous. And once you add Mother Nature-driven power plants, all sorts of interesting engineering problems occur. What we've done is we've taken a lateral approach to solving that problem by bringing load to generation, and specifically batchable computing load, things like crypto computing, Bitcoin mining, and now we've advanced to AI and generative AI training, tuning, and inferencing at these locations. And so we're a digital infrastructure company that is focused on driving more renewable energy growth.
Fantastic. I mean, it's remarkable to think that there's that much sort of wastage of 30, as much as 30 or 40%. So you're right. It's a fantastic space to be in, and again, one that's only going to be more and more important as we move forward. So thinking and talking about obviously you know, obviously you're the CEO. You've been the CEO now since I think it's about 2018 with Soluna.
Yeah, I was told by my team that I've been in the seat for 19 months. Somebody should keep track.
Obviously, goes fast.
Yeah, it goes fast. Yeah.
I mean, you're a serial entrepreneur, so you've founded and successfully exited and sold numerous businesses, but that wasn't obviously how you started. So you started actually as a technician, so you were an architect or an engineer before you got into the business world.
Yeah, that's right. So I did my undergrad and grad at Cornell University in the computer science department inside the engineering school, and what I was always interested in is the business of computing and the technology of computing. So what I got from university was the raw basic science and understanding and theory behind computing, everything from Turing complete models to distributed computing, and then I stayed for graduate school to take my studies further into the distributed computing technology space. And so that foundation has served me well over the years because just about every technology that we've seen in the last 25 years or so has been based on these core computer science frameworks and capabilities. Even some of the advanced technology we're seeing today, we were beginning to talk about machine vision when I was just getting started at university. So it blows my mind today that computers can not only describe to you what's in a picture, but also generate a new version of that picture if you wish. And I started my career at Intel, Nick. We were a hardware company at the time. Hardware was sexy. PCs were sort of moving to dominate the global economy. And Intel was trying to find ways to drive demand for its billion-dollar-plus fabrication plants that it was building in the U.S. and beyond. And the trick to doing that was to create new, exciting ways to use the PC. And so I was part of a group called the Intel Architecture Group, and we built software and tools that help to build next generation applications. And one of those was video conferencing. People were laughing at us, like, who's going to use computers as a communication device? And it turns out that Intel's CEO at the time, Andy Grove, who today I believe is one of the best CEOs in history, really focused on the concept that the PC, is more than just a word processor or a calculator. It could actually be a connection device that connects the whole world. And he gave that speech in the mid to late 90s at a big PC conference. And what he was describing was essentially the convergence between PCs and telecommunications. And that concept, convergence, that was the first time that I saw it. And you can look at just about every innovation since then, and it's all been driven by convergence. And so we're seeing the convergence again now with renewables and computing. So that strong foundation in engineering and technology has served me well as an entrepreneur.
It gives me a little bit of hope. I've spent the last 4 weekends now travelling up and down the UK, visiting universities for my son to do engineering.
Oh, really?
That's what he's very strong in maths. Very excited about computers and looking at engineering courses. So it gives me hope. He's a bright kid, so I'm sure he'll do well. He obviously led itself and worked well to you anyway. So obviously you spent a few years as an architect at Intel, and then not satisfied. Already quite early on, you set up your first business, and indeed, that's your first sort of dalliance into entrepreneurship, so to speak.
Yeah. Technically, my first business was in high school. Actually, I
really
started this business. I started this business selling. So in our high school, I went to a trade high school where you essentially learn specific trades with your hands. You can learn mechanical technology. You can learn opticals, and then they had a computing or information sciences section, and then they had this sort of mini computer in the building, and they had these machines that were in the lab, and you had to come in with a disk to store your program. Otherwise, there was no storage to store your programs at the time, and so they said, we'll give you the first one for free, but once it fills up, you got to get your own disks. And so I saved up some money with the help of my brother, and then I went out and bought a bunch of discs, different colors, green, yellow, orange, and started selling. I bought them for like $1 and started selling them for $5. my high school value. Yeah. So it was sexy because people the ones the school gave you was black, and you could get colored ones for me. The only thing I had to manage was getting robbed, leaving the high school. So everybody knew how much money I was making. But my first real business was a software company. It was in Boston. I co-founded it with 4 of my colleagues, actually, from university. We were always impatient, to your point. We were not necessarily built for large corporate America, and it was clear that we were going to go start something. So every Saturday we actually got on a call. I'd probably be eating a sandwich or something, and we'd be talking about what's happening in the technology space and where might be some interesting pockets. They were in Boston at a younger company doing a lot of big year 2000 transition work and distributed computing. And we came up with this idea, and we were really excited about it, and we decided to all quit our jobs and go do that. So I moved from the West Coast to Boston, and we formed our first company. Once we got it all started and got the first check from some of our investors, who were friends and family, that's where all the fear and anxiety started. Like, oh my God, we really don't know what the hell we're doing. And we had to learn, learn as you go, if you will. And one of the things I learned was that if you want to avoid making mistakes, it's okay to make mistakes as an entrepreneur, but for the most part, they should be original ones. You can you can you can avoid making unoriginal mistakes by talking to people who've done it before, and that's what we did. So I called. At the time, there was no internet, and so I picked up this directory of all the professionals from Cornell that lived in the Boston area, and I sort of, used my finger and scanned down, companies that were younger companies and entrepreneurs, and I just started calling people and saying, hey, we're a group of Cornellians here. We started this company, and we really would like to pick your brain because there's a lot of things we don't know. Like, how do you raise capital? Like, how do you, how do you, put a pitch deck together and things like that. And it was an amazing experience. People did pick up the phone and call us back, and were very helpful, and that sort of set us on a path to success.
So obviously there was a few college friends, university friends, all come together.
Right.
You all play different roles. So how did you sort of find your way in getting that working? Because you can't all do the same thing. So it sounds like you were very much the sort of the face of the business, perhaps, or certainly the person picking up the phone, maybe doing the sales, raising the funds. The other guys want more back office, or were you all doing the same thing?
Good question. So with 5 co-founders, there's a lot of mouths to feed, so you had to figure out who does what. And it turns out that the roles were natural places. So there was 5 of us. So let me see. So we had William Lee, who was probably the smartest and brainiest of the bunch, had the original concept around the technology. So he took the role as chief technology officer. Mauricio was a great programmer and developer, and fantastic team former. So he took the head of engineering role. Julian Pellinor was an incredible architect. In fact, the company they worked for before built custom software platforms to help companies go from mainframe to client server, and so he took the chief architect role, and then I took the CEO role because in my role as at Intel I was doing a lot of outbound stuff, and then Joe Pilkerton took a chief operating role because he was great with building and forming teams and running operations and that sort of thing. So we had some natural roles for people to sit in, but in every startup, those tend to sort of start blurring. Everybody was in sales. Everyone was in marketing. When we were, fundraising, everybody was sort of, involved in, helping to find investors and raise capital. In a startup, you give yourself a title, but the truth is, everybody is sort of, chipping in to do everything in the company. And then as the company grows, those roles start to change. You become less founders and more operators and true managers of a business, and that's where you have to go get some real training around how to do that. You don't just sort of wake up out of bed or know how to do that stuff. And so over the last 25 years, I've just been on this journey to become a better and better CEO by running a myriad of different types of businesses, different scales, size, markets, and just seeing where my limitations are and see if I can improve those over time.
And I think that's the big thing, isn't it? I mean, particularly when you've got, multiple founders, big personalities, it's their sweat, their blood, DNA in the business.
Right.
You've got to make sure that people respect the boundaries and the structure of the role, isn't it? Because otherwise, I suppose we've all heard of horror stories where it falls apart. And I think, clearly you guys got that working.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I mean, our first one was, we just had an amazing team. Most of the time that when investors spoke to us, they were just attracted to the energy of the Magic Five, if you will, and we were very upfront about what we knew and what we didn't know. There wasn't a lot of ego where we were sort of playing this role that just wasn't true, right? Like we know everything and we're going to dominate the world. Our innocence and naivete in certain areas actually ingratiated investors and allowed us to attract great mentors to help us to, build the business, make it successful, and solve real problems. We eventually hired, managers and members of our teams that were in some cases 20 years our senior, and it was quite challenging to sort of have this role where you're the boss of someone who's been, working in these really big enterprises for 20 plus years. And I think, the fact that we didn't have egos and we found the opportunity to learn from those folks. One thing we did is we had drive and we had vision, and that attracted these fantastic operators, which helped us to build a very successful company.
I mean, that's incredible. I can imagine, yeah. And bringing in people that have been there, done it, seen a lot, 20 years more senior to yourself.
Yeah.
And there's you, like I say, quite humble about the whole thing.
Exactly.
And,
that's
and
right.
bringing them in and getting them on that journey. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's getting people bought into the vision, bought into the role that they're there to play, and bringing them on that journey.
That's right. That's exactly right. And
it worked.
Yeah, and it worked. Yeah.
You managed to sell to BEA Systems, I think?
That's right. So we sold the business to BEA Systems, which was a very successful enterprise software company right in the middle of the growth of the internet and the whole digital wave. Everyone was racing to the internet. It's kind of like everyone is sort of, dipping their toe in AI right now, so they don't get left behind. Everyone wanted to take their brick and mortar businesses and make them digital and online, or at least dip their toes and see what this is, what this is about. And so there was just a rush to buy core software technology and tools to help companies do that. We built, our first company was in the business of building Lego blocks, if you will, for software Lego blocks that you can use to build these e-commerce applications very quickly. And it's kind of funny to talk about that now, because just about every software is built like that, right? You go to GitHub and download some patches of code, some open source stuff, you'll blend it together with some proprietary, and suddenly you've got this magical thing. Now you can go to GPT and tell it to, start writing some code for you, and then you can go from there. At the time, that wasn't available. Folks were trying to, figure out how to use this new technology, and so we built these things. I literally would go into these banks in New York with a box of Lego blocks and say, "This is the future of software." And they're like, "That? How much does that cost?" And it says, "Well, they cost $5 at Toys R Us, but the ones we're going to sell you, they cost $1 million." And we built a great business. Now, BEA was a fast-growing business. They built all the plumbing software that our software would run on top of, rather. And they were also the fastest company in history to reach $1 billion in run rate revenue. They had 53 offices all over the world, really powering the enterprise. And their primary competitor was IBM, so it was like a toe-to-toe battle going through this. And then suddenly, all of these young, new digital companies were sort of coming after them. So it was a very interesting experience. Our company was doing about 15 million in revenue. We were acquired for 10 times that, and we grew it 10 times in a 3-year period. So by the time I left BEA, we were doing upwards of $200 million on our technology. I spent lots of time traveling the world telling our story, and it was a fantastic experience. And I've taken that experience with me through a series of other entrepreneurial ventures as well.
Yeah, because I mean, that's incredible. So going from a small 50-person business, startup, 5 friends putting it together, to going into, essentially a corporate.
Right.
And rather than the owner and the founder, you're a director,
Right.
And again also into a proper sales role in a large corporate organisation where you haven't been a true salesperson in the conventional sense.
Yeah.
You've done it as a
Right.
quite frankly entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
how did you sort of find that adjustment? Because that nothing prepares you for that, I'm sure.
It was very hard. It was not an easy transition. Again, you look to mentors. There was this one gentleman that was the head of sales at BEA. He was actually one of the important people I was told to meet, because he was sort of, putting up the big numbers, and if there's anybody who's going to be responsible for selling our software and making it successful. It was him. And the funny thing is, when we first met, it wasn't a great experience. He shows up in the, again, remember, I'm in my late 20s at the time, and everyone at this company is like 50 and above. You know what I mean? So he walks into an office. I had just combined my business with BEA. He was a lead salesperson for the company, or the lead sales manager for a big team at the company. And he comes in with one of his colleagues. I'm sitting in this sort of these hotel offices, if you will, in California and San Francisco, and I'm sort of, reviewing my notes and sort of preparing my thoughts for the conversation. So two gentlemen walk in, and they say, so, excuse me, are you going to be here for very long? And I said, well, why do you ask? Well, we've got this meeting with a very important vice president here soon, and we're going to need the space. And I says, oh, I see. I'm sorry about that. Who are you meeting? And they said, John Belizaire. They look at each other like, what? None of your business. Like, what do you? But the guy's name is John Belizaire. Like, why do you care? Like, are you going to be out of here or not? And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm John Belizaire. Nice to meet you. These guys, their faces went red.
Their jaws must have dropped.
Their jaws dropped, and look, I probably could have made this guy's life miserable, but
it would have been fun.
Yeah, it would have been fun. But that kind of ingratiated us to some extent. We became really good friends, and we put up some of the biggest deals together. And he taught me about the inner workings of BEA, what drove the sales team, sales compensation, all of that kind of stuff. And he also happened to be an incredible wine connoisseur. And so anytime I had parties or whatever, I would have him order the wine. So a lot of professional journey, not just entrepreneurship, a lot of professional journey is about personal growth, Nick. And I think from my own perspective, the fact that I was in these environments where there were lots of, people that were my senior, they just had a tremendous amount of experience and expertise to impart upon me. And by, letting go of my ego, I just absorbed a lot of what they had to offer, built some, fantastic friendships. And that has served me well going forward. I guess now I'm sort of the sage talking to these young professionals and so forth. And what I remember is that, their job is to teach and your job is to learn. And through that learning, you can grow. And through your growth, you end up having more superpowers that you can use to be successful in your role, to build new businesses, solve challenging problems, think differently about things. And when I look back, a lot of my success has really been driven by the fact that I've been fortunate to be exposed to some of these incredible people.
It's fantastic you've actually had that. Not everyone gets that sort of luxury. And obviously, moving on to when you left there, you then founded another business. And we'll quickly sort of go through it because I've got a few questions on it. You co-founder, CEO, insurance underwriting software SaaS play business, a significant period of time, 10 years in the organization to get it to where you were successfully sold. Yeah. What were the biggest challenges that you had to overcome to turn that business into a success?
Oh, they were numerous.
I'm sure there were.
Let's just start with the fact that we knew absolutely nothing about insurance when we formed the company. The way we came up with the ideas, we actually researched our way into it. Just before that, we had started a company where we were investing in companies. It was sort of like an incubation style firm. And we were investing our own capital, and, we thought, we're smart, we can help companies build companies. And the truth of the matter is, we were not smart. We had some money, we can invest in companies. But what we found is that most entrepreneurs would come in with technology, but they didn't have any business. And that's the one thing that I learned at BEA, and I guess Intel prior to that, was that technology look, technology is the easy part, actually developing a business model that's sustainable, that solves real problems that you can scale over time. That's the hard part. Finding a pain that can be filled by that technology ultimately is the nirvana you're looking for. And it actually turns out that it's better for you to go find the pain first and then figure out how to create the technology for it. And so that was what we learned, losing all the money we did investing in these guys who had great technology. And so we went out and uh, essentially studied these different markets. We had this theory that software was changing. It went from being digital on the outside to more digitizing the inside of the business, and we started talking about technologies that were involved in that: workflow integration, data and analytics, and we just started studying what companies were using this technology. And it turns out that all the ones you would expect were using it. The banking community, the financial services community, the government was getting involved in this technology, and then we saw insurance using it. And we thought, insurance never invests in technology early. They're always like the laggards, like you never go there. And so that piqued our interest. We dug into that, and to make a long story short, we formed this company called First Best that was geared to essentially building a digital workflow and decision platform for underwriters that made these very complex decisions every day. But it turns out most of them made it from their gut, and it was hard to sort of pinpoint how repeatable that could be. But there were lots of other interesting new companies like Progressive Insurance that was using data and computing to improve decisioning. And the company became one of the largest and most successful and profitable companies in the space. And investors were jumping in and saying, "Hey, wait a second, why is this? Why are those guys making money and you guys are not?" And it just shifted the psyche and focus for these management teams. And we jumped in. Because we knew nothing about insurance, we actually were able to, again, take a lateral view of how to solve the problem. Most insurance companies would say, you just can't do that. Like, there's no way to replicate an underwriter's decisions. There's no way to capture that decision process. And we thought, well, why not? You can pretty much digitize anything. And again, that naivete allowed us to do that. But to convince a business industry, and for most people may not know this, but insurance is sort of one of the largest, most powerful industries that you'll never know much about. We all use insurance in some way, and it's required, or we feel like we need it because we're sort of selling off risk. But the truth is that the insurance industry pretty much drives the entire global economy. We would be hard pressed to actually run the economy without having insurance because of the risk management aspects of it. And so when I sold the business to another large insurance software company, I wrote like this list of things that I learned through the process. And here's a few of them. One is when you're selling to the insurance industry, you have to remember they're risk managers, not risk takers. So, so if you show up with this new exciting technology that's going to change their world, they're like, "There's no way we're touching that." You said "new" in the sentence. That's not good. So we don't want to touch that. And so one of our challenges was, how do you sell into an environment that's adverse to risk, where it's about changing your whole processes and believing that the technology can help you advance that. The other challenge we found was, how do you take one win, like when you had one customer that you successfully deployed the technology for, and then you want to get the rest of the community to just buy in. Entrepreneurs are always, fooled into thinking that one win is like the ticket. Now we have one customer using it, everybody's going to use it now. No, actually, you need to. There's a very specific process you need to follow to take that story, that win, that success story, and then tell it to a very specific set of customers from then on, lookalikes, colleagues of theirs. And to do that, you have to understand that in every industry, there is a small community. Every industry has a small community. So I'm in the insurance business. I'm in the energy business and computing business now. And when I look at the energy business, it's just like insurance. Like, you can't do anything without energy. It's a huge global industry, but it's a very small community. So you have to think of, like, who are the connections that you need to make from that point to help to drive the business, going forward. And the last one I'll share is related to IT versus business. So with every company, there's a couple of doors you can use to go into the company and sell your wares. There's the front door, which is where the business, the people who make money, hold the purse, and then there's the back door, which is, or perhaps it's the side door. IT doesn't like to be referred to as the back door, but or you can go to the side door where the IT organization lives, and they sort of run the house, if you will. The traditional mode is you go into the IT door and convince them that this technology is the ticket to the future, and then they walk you into the business and say, this is the solution we would like to use to solve your problems. What we found is that it was better to go in through the front door, go into the business where the pain lives, and convince them that this was the solution that their IT has not proposed to them, and why not? And then they would then take us down to the IT, and we would take our lumps, because IT is like, how did you get into this building? How dare you go through the front door? After a few punches to the gut, we would say, no problem, we'll never do that again, but just give us the order. And that would be a way for us to build, a real business. And those 3 lessons, there are more. I think my list was like 10 or 15, but those 3 lessons were the big ones that come to mind that were challenges for us that ultimately helped us to be successful down the road.
Yeah, so takeaways from that is obviously understanding your audience, using the right sort of language, like I say, insurance, new, innovative, probably a bit terrifying.
That's right.
So exactly. Understanding who you're talking to, then it's about the solution, looking at the pain points, going through that way, and understanding the network and building those alliances and relationships with the right sort of people. Like I say, it is a small community. I have to admit, I don't know much about the insurance sector, but in the technology world, again, and particularly within high performance compute or AI, again, there's a certain community of players that you kind of build those relationships with. So exactly. I guess it's working out how you're going to carve out your niche and sell your pain point in the right possible way.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that's right.
So you did that within the insurance sector, didn't know anything about it. That the naivety actually helps you, because you could actually think a little bit more laterally rather than closed-minded.
That's right.
Again, you sold. Like you mentioned, you've also got another business on the side where you're investing, you're offering advice, capital seed funding, opening up companies to expertise where they wouldn't normally have it. Right. You've seen companies be successful, probably not so successful as well. And you've taken that into, you've got something outside of work that you part of on the founder of the CEO playbook as well. That's quite interesting. So you've got your own publication, interviewing, successful CEOs, getting people to write for you and that kind of thing.
Right.
Lots of people should probably know more about it, maybe.
Yeah, it's a blog that I started writing about 3.5 years ago. It was just after the insurance company I had built. That 10-year run was brutal. It was there was a tremendous amount of learning. We built a successful brand, a great company, but we did have our challenges, and each of those challenges taught me and my team a lot. So I started writing down those learnings, and I felt a tremendous amount of catharsis from the process. It crystallized a lot of things for me. I noticed some things about myself, and I think what it started to shape for me as I was moving away from being, the mentee to the mentor. There were lots of young people calling and saying, "How did you do that?" And how can I do what you did? And so I found myself saying the same thing all the time. So I decided I would write it down, and perhaps people can benefit from that. And so in that blog, CEO Playbook, CEOplaybook.co is a series of articles that I've written over the years. I have a backlog of more that I need to write. I've lost time to write these days. I was just telling my wife I need to get back to it. And what it is it's musings about insights or learnings being in the seat of the CEO specifically. So you can read a lot about entrepreneurship in just about every place. There's interesting online places where you can learn about the nuts and bolts of entrepreneurship, but no one really tells you what you're going to encounter sitting in the seat as a CEO of a startup company. And what I mean by that is, you start out as a founder, you're sort of doing everything yourself, and you're making the coffee, and writing all the marketing materials, and then essentially you're like, oh no, I can't just do all of this myself. I have to build a team. And how do you build a team? What are the important aspects of that? How do you interview somebody? How do you build a culture? How do you shape vision? How does a CEO communicate? How do you tell stories? How do you raise money? How do you build connections? Now that I have a management team, what am I supposed to be doing every day? The stuff that nobody actually tells you, I started writing down, and I've evolved that to sort of smaller insight pieces where it's like a few paragraphs of like, when you're feeling like this, it means that, and this is what you should do. And actually turned that into a physical book one summer. I'm crazy like that. I run a company and write a book. So I wrote this book one summer, and it's called Keep Pushing, and it's really a series of small micro insights about the journey of a CEO and what it takes to keep pushing. And I've sent it out to a number of people, and they've just been like, this is what I needed. Oh my God. And you can put it by your bedside when you're feeling sad and depressed because you had a bad day today. You just read it and realize that, okay, that's just one bump in the road, on a long journey. So sort of gear up for tomorrow for the next leg. And so I encourage young entrepreneurs to read it. My goal is to give the insights that I wish I had when I was getting started to help me to keep pushing and continue to drive.
I'll recommend it to people. I'll have to have a read myself, I think. Because
Yeah,
but
sure.
on that note, and as a quick summary, and I'm sure there's loads and loads of points to add, and we'll go on to Soluna shortly. But as an experienced CEO, you've done it a few times successfully. What for budding, not necessarily young, but sort of young in career, CEOs that are just literally starting out their CEO journey from whatever background, what sort of top 3 tips would you give them to make sure that journey is as smooth, not necessarily pain free, but certainly as smooth as possible?
Oh, that's great. I actually have an article on the site. It's called the Golden Nuggets or something like that. I think it's called Laser Focus. And several of the golden nuggets of insights. I'll definitely share a few here. One is laser focus. So remember I talked about the fact that I called a bunch of previous entrepreneurs from Cornell and asked them a bunch of questions. Well, there was one that I'll never forget. I think he had built 3 or 4 companies. He was on his 5th company or something like that. And he was busy. It took him a long time to call me back. I went into his office, and the guy's sitting there. He's an older gentleman, and every question I asked him, he answered very succinctly and clearly. And he says, look, I've hit you with a lot by the end of our time together. He says, I've hit you with a lot, but if there's one thing that you need to remember, right? I want you to remember one thing, and that is laser focus. CEOs tend to be lured by shiny objects. We're doing great here. Let's go do this other product, or let's go after this market, that sort of thing. And businesses are successful when they do fundamentally one thing really well. Not 2 things, not 3 things, just one. And focusing and understanding what that one thing that you do well is will serve you well going forward. The second is when in charge, take charge. Very often CEOs don't realize that they are the CEO. When you get that title, there's a lot that comes with it, especially when capital comes forth, and if you have co-founders, you tend to want to have like this committee style decision making and so forth. No, that doesn't work. You are in charge. The CEO has to ultimately make the final decision in many respects. Over time, your decision making process changes, and it's important to have a process. Like Bezos says, there's different types of decisions. Some of them are irreversible. Some are the irreversible ones. Spend a lot of time on them, slow them down. The ones that are reversible, let other people make them. You don't have to, make all the decisions. But when you're in charge, definitely take charge. Read a lot. And it's important for CEOs to actually make time to read, gather their thoughts, and process their learnings. In fact, most of that processing comes from pain. You lost a big deal. You didn't get that investor that you wanted. You installed the product at the customer and it broke. There's a lot of things that are going to happen, and that pain is where all the learning happens. I like to say pain is where the learning happens. So you actually want a lot of pain. And in fact, if you're going into entrepreneurship, prepare yourself for a lot of pain. It's not for the faint of heart. Mostly crazy people do it, actually. But
Yeah.
but there are us crazy people out there that want to do that, and so just prepare yourself for a lot of pain. And that pain, that's where you get your best ideas, your best insights. So try to make time to actually do the processing. I typically once a month will go away, like just block my calendar, go offline, and with an analog, a book, and a pen, and just write down, what's happened the last month that were important. What big decisions did I make that I wish I made differently, or what did I learn from those decisions, that sort of thing. So that's important. And reading a lot, reading across multiple disciplines is going to be really helpful for you as a CEO, because most of your job is about problem solving. You're constantly making decisions, but most of those decisions are about removing obstacles for the company. And the more you can see across multiple disciplines, the better you are about changing your frame of reference or your perspective for solving the problem. One thing I've learned in the 25 years in entrepreneurship is, problem solving is about perspective. If you've got this really hard engineering problem, this business problem, this, how do you raise money problem, it's typically solved by changing your perspective. Maybe you sort of reverse the view, or maybe you think differently about the problem, and that sort of opens up your eyes. Let me give you an example. Soluna's success to date has really been driven by our lateral thinking, and that is just sort of taking the problem and reversing it. So, for example, we had a problem ourselves where we had a renewable energy plant. We needed to figure out how to get load to the get the power to load, right, and to monetize it. And we kept thinking about it, and then we said, well, what if we reverse the problem, invert it basically. And inversion is a really powerful mental model that every CEO should incorporate. And essentially, it's the concept of sort of taking a problem statement and turning it around. So our problem statement was, how do we get power to load? Maybe if we reverse it, how do we get load to power? Just by doing that reversal, opened up our minds to, well, what type of load could we move to power? You can't take a factory and put it on the back of a truck. But computing is distributed. I studied distributed computing. You can do computing anywhere, and you can have multiple computers around the world working together in unison. So you could take computing and bring that to the site where the power was available, and that just unlocked all sorts of innovation and opportunities for us as a business. And folks who are listening right now, try inversion. If you're stuck on a really hard problem, invert it. And that's one of many mental models that can be very powerful. So I would start reading a lot about mental models and going back to your sort of basics of physics and chemistry. And so those are insights. Like I said, go to the blog. There's many more there, but I think that these are the types of things nobody tells you when you're going to be an entrepreneur and then ultimately become CEO of that business.
So there's obviously a lot more to it than that, and people should check it out. But essentially, laser sharp focus, taking charge, very much, and then learning and reflection.
That's right.
And literally going away. I write everything in a book and in a pad because that's how it ends up getting locked in this old rusty brain.
Exactly.
So it does work. But you're right. Obviously, the pain and learning from your mistakes is how you obviously move the business forward. It doesn't matter whether you're a one man starting something or one person starting something, or whether you're 100 or 200, 300 people. So that's fantastic. We'll definitely need to go more into this next time, I think, because there's so much here about this. But we do want to talk a bit about Soluna and what you've been doing. And I think we're in this fantastic space where you're looking at obviously renewable energy sources and utilizing that. You've got green data centers. You've got an AI offering and working with the likes of NVIDIA and GPUs. And then you've also got obviously the Bitcoin mining business too. So you've put it all together as a package, and you're the CEO. And have you got those businesses? Are they separate businesses, or are they all under the one? How have you actually sort of structured it?
So Soluna is a holding company model. We've got 3 operating companies underneath, really 4, but I want to focus on 3 core ones. One is called Soluna Energy, and that business goes out and essentially develops projects that ultimately become landing places for our other 2 businesses. So we source power and land sites and a host of other things through that business. And there's a whole development process that takes place there. You've got to go convince the power plant, like I said, to allow you to build a data center there. You've got to convince them to get access to some of the land that they own or have access to through a lease with the landowner. You've got to negotiate that. You have to get all of the permitting and protocol support or from the grid to add your data center to that power plant. And you also have to do a whole series of technical studies about the land site and the actual electrical flow to ensure that adding the data center doesn't increase the vulnerabilities of the grid or increase risk with the grid. And so there's a whole process and a whole team that does that in that company. Then we have Soluna Digital. That is the company focused on the support of digital currencies through our data centers. So Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin hosting is part of our business. So we build these facilities that very large hyperscale mining companies come and lease from us. And we also, through joint ventures, do some of that mining ourselves and portions of our facility. And then our newest business at the time of this recording is Soluna Cloud. That business is focused on AI, and we provide AI computing resources through the form of GPU as a service, if you will, or GPU rentals. We make that available through a host of aggregation sites, and we also make that available directly to customers that want to reserve a set of GPUs from us. And then the second part of that is building these green data centers that enterprises can use to power their AI projects and workloads. Enterprises will probably be the biggest beneficiary of this technology. Most of the transformation will take place there. They have most of the data that can result in pretty significant innovation on a global basis. But that data is their crown jewels, and they want to make sure it's protected. And so they are more likely going to support open source models or customized models that are deployed in specialized private data centers where they know where their data is and they know what the stack looks like. And we're building next generation data centers specifically for AI only that live with these renewable energy plants. Because there's one thing for sure, the biggest beneficiaries of AI, the enterprise, are also the ones who will need to be most responsible for ensuring that the growth of that industry is sustainable and doesn't destroy the planet. And by aligning with their core ESG goals, they can then deploy those workloads in these specialized facilities that we're building to support that growth. So we support co-location and GPU hosting in those facilities. So that's the Soluna Holdings family of companies. The fourth is
Wow.
sort of a services company that provides services to the different companies.
Oh, okay, right. Understood. Makes perfect sense. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you've got all those businesses together. The energy business probably was that the first business that
Yeah.
you
So
went into
Soluna Energy.
operation,
Yep. So Soluna
and now obviously the
Energy
most new one is obviously the
is
cloud
cloud.
business.
That's right. Yeah.
So, which we've seen other organisations sort of follow that path as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we talk about sustainability, but respectfully, it sounds like you've truly got it nailed in that sense. In the fact that
Yeah,
you
thank you. So, yeah, I mean, again, inversion, lateral thinking, right? Why don't, if you want to make computing more sustainable, where you've got to bring computing to where it normally wouldn't be, and you've got to bring it to these remote locations, rural areas where power is stranded, and combine those two resources, and you create something new called renewable computing. And we believe renewable computing is the future. Power and computing infrastructure will become one over time, and that will allow us to power the next decades of innovation around computing. Many people are saying that AI is the next steam engine and will allow us to do things we've never done, as a race. And I agree that potential is there because we are now able to process, beyond human levels of data and information and find insights in that data that we normally would not be able to. And that's going to help us to solve climate change, overcome some of our most challenging diseases in the world, become a multi-planetary species. There's a lot that this thing will do, and we just got to make sure that we do it in the most scalable, sustainable way.
So obviously, you've got a number of different businesses all working together, all complementing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Some are newer than others. What does the future look like for you over the next sort of 12, 18 months? Obviously, I'm sure it's about growth, but is it new site selection? Is it getting the cloud business really up and running? What's the focus?
Big focus is on building out our latest projects. So next year we'll be doubling the size of Project Dorothy. Oh, by the way, the names of our data centers are all after top, most famous women catalyzers. So Dorothy Vaughan was part of the Hidden Figures math team that helped to get us to the moon. Project Kadi is the next project that's twice the size of Dorothy. We're going to build our next Bitcoin mining facility, so that'll be under digital, and we're going to build an AI, one of our first scaled AI facilities there. That'll be under cloud, and Kadi is named after Kadi Kariko, the famous scientist that has been working on mRNA therapies and so forth. And we have another one called Project Rosa. We've just announced, about the same size as Kadi, maybe a little bigger. That's just getting started in development. Rosalind is the woman who used X-ray imagery to find the double helix design. So these are all inspired by these incredible women scientists because we believe that we are doing something that's never been done before, bringing computing to renewable energy and integrating those two and converging them, if you will. And so the next 12, 18 months is going to be crystallizing that vision by building and growing our footprint of assets under management and specifically diversifying our revenue into AI. So there's going to be a big focus on cloud and the cloud success, continuing the growth of our Bitcoin business. But we want to position Soluna as the sustainable, scalable AI platform for the future.
So you're literally growing ground up over the next 18 months.
We are.
New
Yeah.
projects, mining
Yep.
business, cloud business,
Exactly.
all growing. So
That's
you
right.
you got a lot on your plate. That's for sure.
Indeed, I do.
And in terms of just sort of wrapping up, I mean, what is the secret to the success? So in terms of we've talked about your leadership style and we've talked about how you've got it right so far, and learned from those mistakes that on the way. What is it about that's made it work and will make it work over the next 18 months? Is it about empowering a really strong leadership team? Is it about the partnerships that you guys have developed? What has been
Yeah.
really sort of the main focus for the next success?
It's about the team, Nick. I have found that building the most diverse, and I'm talking about culturally diverse, experience diversity, experience in terms of like the depth of their experience, sort of mixing younger new professionals with older, more experienced people. Cross industry. So Soluna has computing, software, energy expertise all mixed up in one company. We're now going to start adding data center, AI, and tier three data center development expertise, next generation software expertise for building out a cloud platform. That requires us to have a culture that really gels the business together. At Soluna, we have a few core principles, and one of them is the fact that, we're pioneering. We're constantly sort of thinking about doing things the harder way, if you will, because that's where, true innovation and success comes from. Do something really hard and make it look easy. You build value, right? I order things from Amazon, and sometimes they get there the next day. Sometimes they get there the same day
It blows
from
my mind.
billions of products in their catalog, and anything I can think of, I'm walking down the street and I just order it on my phone with one click and it arrives the next day. That's really hard to do from a logistic perspective, right? Because I could be anywhere. But they make it look so easy. That builds value. And so we want to do the same thing, making it such that you can be doing the most advanced computing workloads and feel good that it's being done in a green data center that's not harming the planet, but also solving the most challenging things in the world. That comes from building a team that can work together in a highly collaborative way. So that's another principle that we have is around the concept of collaboration. We're a highly integrated team. When there's a problem to solve, we sort of all come together as a group, and we have this 10 ideas exercise we do, and you basically try to come up with 10 ideas on how to solve the problem. And if you can't come up with 10, come up with 20. And it's just like there's no dumb ideas. And what you find is that there's always one or two in that list that are like, huh, that's like genius. and and that has driven our success continuously over time. And so I'm going to be focusing my energy on bringing more talent and expertise to the company that really helps to further diversify us and try to hire the best in every role and really just push that forward in the company. So it's really about the people. That's what's been a key to our success. We've got one of the best teams in the industry.
Well, look, thank you very much. This last 58 odd minutes has been brilliant. Learned a lot. I think a lot of the guys, the founders, the people in the industry that are going to be listening to this are certainly going to have learned a lot from you today as well. So we're going to have to invite you back. I feel like you're obliged now.
Happy to come back. Look forward to it.
It's been absolutely fantastic, but thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure everybody else did too. But we'll see you again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nick. Pleasure to be here.
Cheers now. I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed that conversation with John. It was so interesting to hear about his journey from successful technician, engineer, and then founding his own company. I definitely feel like I've come away with some brilliant insights, and I hope you have too. In the next episode, I've got a great conversation with Doreen Pennell, the Chief Sales Officer at Scaleway. We talk about all the challenges of motivating a large sales team in a competitive environment, and so much more. So make sure you stay tuned. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to follow us so you don't miss a thing.